Hello guys, I'm back to continue talking about Gutenberg. In the last lesson, I made an introduction about this new tool. We installed Gutenberg and explained a little about this new editing experience in WordPress. As I told you, it looks a little like most page builders such as Divi, Visual Composer, and so on. But there's still some hard work to do. While the WordPress team works hard to improve Gutenberg, I'm going to show you all that's available at the moment and especially show you what your theme can do to get the most out of Gutenberg. If you're watching this lesson on YouTube, please be aware that this lesson is part of a sequence of tutorials and it's part of my course on WordPress Theme Development with Bootstrap. To get the most out of the following lessons, you should have already downloaded the material that I left available in the last video. If you haven't yet, go back to the first video, watch it, and download the material with all the instructions, okay? In this lesson, I'm gonna spend some time explaining to you some of the basic features of the new Gutenberg editor. As I said in previous lessons, the goal is not to explain everything about all the tools available, even because Gutenberg is a project that is still evolving. Many things are yet to come, but as my students were very curious and eager to learn more about it, and rightly so, let's explore what we got until now. Let's first take a look at the layout. As I said before, it has nothing to do with the classic editor, the tiny MCE editor. In fact, Gutenberg revolves around a basic element which is the so-called block. Everything in the layout revolves around these blocks. So if you hover over the document, you see that every little element here is a block. We have an image block, paragraph blocks, headers, lists, and they can all be identified by these little tooltips that show when we mouse over each of them. Look. One interesting thing is that they are highly interactive. So here you can move a block up and down, just a click of the mouse. Drag and drop to rearrange blocks will also be available, but not now, maybe in the near future, which will make Gutenberg even more dynamic. And maybe when you're watching this video, this function is already in place. For now, what we got is a functionality called the inserter. The inserter is this plus button that you can see right here, just below each block. For example, here, or here in this toolbar at the top. The main goal is to facilitate as much as possible the insertion of any block in the editing area. So by clicking this plus button, you have access to all the blocks. And these blocks can be of various types, from simple chunks of texts, paragraphs, to elements that until now were hidden in WordPress. For example, did you know that you could embed a YouTube or a Vimeo video or any media content from all of these other services without any plugin? Yeah, a lot of people had no idea. Now with the blocks, the whole thing became much clearer. And the whole idea is that any kind of content that can be added to the editor area will be available as a block in the future. So the user will never need to use short codes anymore or any piece of HTML code. They will only need to choose a block and place the content wherever they want. Cool, isn't it? Well, then you may ask me, but Marcelo, what will happen to the content like posts and pages, content that I already have on my WordPress installation? What will become of them? Will I need to recreate everything from scratch? Well, to answer this, we're gonna leave this demo content behind for a moment and we're gonna open one of the posts that is already saved in our WordPress site. Let's open up this one here. Well, look, as you can see, it seems like everything's still in place. What happens when you activate the editor is that WordPress moves everything inside this single block, which is called the classic block. Basically, the classic block, which you can find also through the inserter, look, it's the old editor, tiny MCE. That is, if you want to continue using the TinyMCE inside Gutenberg, you can. It's possible. If you want, you can also convert everything into blocks. Here on the right side you have some actions related to the block, which will of course vary from block to block. In this example, I can convert this classic content into a block by clicking here in Convert to Blocks. In this case, I end up with 2 paragraphs. If I'm not satisfied with the changes I made, I just click here on this little arrow. I can go back here and ask to duplicate or remove the block. You can get the idea. Let's turn this content back into blocks. Okay. So I have 2 paragraphs again here. So let me show you something else. Each block has its own settings, and this varies from block to block. For example, here for the paragraph block, I have some basic formatting options: bold, italic, alignment, and here on the side I have more options related only to the block selected. This box here is called the Block Inspector. Here I can, as an example, change the font size. I can use these buttons or the slider. I can toggle to show a larger initial letter. Here under color settings, I can choose the font color and also background color. By default, I have these colors here, but I can also choose another colors. Later on, we're gonna learn how to make the color palette for your theme available too. So if you want the client to be restricted to only a few colors, for example, you can do it. And for most blocks, you can also add a special CSS class that can be very useful if you want to customize them. Pretty much like what we got in most page builders out there. This other tab called Document gives you access to all settings related to the post as a whole. Pretty much like we already had in the old editor as meta boxes, only the layout is a bit different. One of the advantages of this tool is that even if your theme hasn't yet added any support to Gutenberg, it allows you to have a very consistent look, both here in the editor and in the front end. So both versions can look quite the same. Yet, you can always take a look at how the front end looks like by clicking here on this preview button. As we have already tweaked the post a little, we can have a look at how it's getting. Let's click here in preview, and the front end opens in a new tab. Sometimes you'll notice a boring bug here as you try to preview the post. You see that if you click on the update button before previewing the results, the button will be endlessly processing. To view the page, you have to reload the editor and then click preview again. Then the page will load. Also, sometimes you see some errors displaying saying that the update has failed, as we saw at the beginning of this lesson. I hope that in the future they can correct that. Let's try some more. Let's suppose I want to insert an image gallery here between these 2 paragraphs. For me, this gallery block, which is a native Gutenberg block, is one of the most incredible blocks. It simply works out of the box. So to create a new gallery, let's go ahead and use the inserter. It may be this one here or this one here too. The difference is that when you choose to use this one at the top, you need to reposition the block later because it's going to be placed at the end of the post. So I'm gonna use this one here. And to color block, I have a couple of different options. I can choose a block here, where some of the recently used blocks will show. I can click here on this plus icon and look for the block here, or use the search box. Or I can do it the easiest way. I'm gonna type a slash and then write the name of the block I want. For example, /gallery. And I don't even have to write the full name of the block. Look, for example, /u. It's already showing me the YouTube block and so on. Just hit enter and I can set up some options for my block. In this case, I'm gonna choose a couple of images that I already have in this WordPress installation. I can upload some new images too if I wish. I'm gonna select these 3 images and that's it. And the gallery is already in place. In this case, it's a 3-column gallery. And if you wish, you can come here and choose only 2 columns. Let's see what happens. Look how cool. So let's see if it's showing up right on the front end. And there you have it. Perfect. Now the whole thing don't stop here. Gutenberg has brought to us 2 new types of alignment. Those alignments will affect blocks such as images, image galleries, videos, etc. You can choose between an alignment called wide and a second one called full. In the next lesson, I'm gonna show you how to enable these 2 alignments in the theme because by default they are not enabled. We only get these 3 kinds of alignments up here. Another thing you can do with the blocks is turn them into something else. For example, a gallery block can be converted into a single image block. Just click here on the first button of this area here, which by the way has a name. It's called the floating menu bar. And it will show you a list of blocks you can convert it into. This of course varies from block to block. And of course not all blocks will have this feature here. In this case, we can transform the gallery into individual image blocks. Look. And of course, if you want to revert this action, you can always click here. Or if you have already closed the post editor, we can revert it back to the older version by clicking this revision button. Later on this course, we'll talk about other features, but that's enough for now. I believe you had an interesting idea of how Gutenberg works. For those who want to learn more, of course, I will leave a link of a great tutorial that explains in detail how other blocks work inside Gutenberg. And this link will be available in the video description below. In the next lesson, we're gonna start working with the theme files. So let's first see how to add support for those 2 special alignments that I mentioned today. And we'll begin to understand the connections between our theme and the Gutenberg editor. So until then, see ya!